Masechet Baba Batra Daf Kof Lamed Dalid. The Mishnah mentioned that if someone disinherits their son, then that is valid. But the rabbis are not pleased with someone who does so. But there was a difference of opinion about if that son is wicked, wayward, and the father disinherits. Rashbag says that's a positive thing. But we concluded saying that according to Tanakama, a father should never disinherit his son, even if he's wayward. You rebuke, of course, but not disinherit totally in that way. That's not going to lead to them repenting and becoming better. And so now we continue on that theme with a story, Teno Rabbanan. Maaseh be'adam echad shelo hayu banav nohagin kashura. There was a certain person who had sons and they were not acting properly. Amad v'chatab nechasav liYonatan ben Uziel. And so he got up and he wrote a will giving all of his property to Yonatan ben Uziel. Yonatan ben Uziel lived during the second Bet HaMikdash and is famous for translating the Nevi'im into Aramaic. So he was a great sage. It's not clear why he gave it to Yonatan ben Uziel. One possibility could be he did not want to give his sons anything at all. So he gave it to a great sage to support him in his Torah learning and whatever Yonatan decided he should do with the money. It is also possible that he made a vow and said, I'm not giving my sons anything. But maybe on his deathbed, he's like, you know what? I actually would like to give something to them, even though they're wicked, and I made this vow. How can I circumvent it? And so perhaps he gave it to Yonatan ben Uziel so that then Yonatan ben Uziel would give all or part of it to the sons. And as long as he gives it indirectly in that way, he's not violating his vow. We'll see why this interpretation makes sense when as we read along. Me'asa Yonatan ben Uziel machar shelish v'ikdish shelish v'echazil lebanav shelish. What did Yonatan ben Uziel do? He sold a third of the estate for himself. He was allowed to keep it for himself. That's why the father gave it to him. He made a third of it hekdesh. He consecrated it and donated it, and 1/3 he returned to the guy's children. So this is after the guy died, and so we don't know exactly the circumstances. Maybe Yonatan ben Uziel saw that they made teshuvah and deserved it again, or maybe the father kind of wanted them to get a third of it. Whatever the reason is, this is what he did. Ba alav Shammai b'maklo v'tarmilo. But then Shammai, this Shammai Hazaken, the father of Bet Shammai, the creator of the institution of Bet Shammai, and he came with his stick and traveling bag to come and protest what Yonatan ben Uziel did. He's like, you should not do that. And now it's not clear what which way he's protesting, and it depends on what Yonatan ben Uziel did. If Yonatan ben Uziel gave it to them to circumvent a vow, so then Shammai might be protesting that. He says, you can't use a loophole. The father didn't want it to go to the sons and made a vow, and so you can't now just make a loophole. You don't have it for that reason. The father only gave it to you so that it would not go to the kids, and you're using this loophole. It's not valid. So he is coming and protesting. Amar lo Shammai, im ata yachol losi et ma shemacharti u'ma she'ikdashti, ata yachol losi ma she'achzarti. And so Yonatan ben Uziel rejected Shammai's protests, and he said, Shammai, if you can undo that which I sold and that which I made hekdesh, then yes, I would agree you can also take back what I gave to the children. Because if you're claiming that I am not a rightful heir, not an heir, but a gift, recipient of the estate, so then yes, you can go and undo everything I did. But only if you can do the first two. If you can undo the first two, you can undo the third as well. But im lav yatayachol lehosi ma she'achzarti. If you admit that whatever I sold is a final sale and what I consecrated is a final consecration, then you cannot take it back from the kids either. It's all or nothing, because either Yonatan ben Uziel is a proper recipient and really owns it, and if he really owns it fully, then he can do whatever he wants with it. He's the new owner. He can decide divide. He can consecrate it. He can keep all of it. He can give all of it back to the children. He can do whatever he wants. So if you agree that he's a rightful owner for the other two things, then he has a right to give it back to the kids if he wants. And that's it. This was a good point. Amari tiach alai ben Oziel, tiach alai ben Oziel. Shammai said, Ben Uziel, that's Yonatan, reprimanded me. He reprimanded me. I have no response. He's right. This is the way it is. Since he has full ownership rights, he can give it back to the sons, even though Shammai seemed to think that he should not do that and would have wanted to undo it. But if you're the rightful owner, you can do whatever you want. Okay, now we analyze that story with another story. Now, what did Shammai think originally when he came and protested? Why did he think that he would be able to undo the giving of the part of the estate to the kids? Apparently, Shammai may not have known that Yonatan kept some for himself, sold some of it, and consecrated some of it. He may have only heard that he gave some things to the children, and he's like, no, the father only gave it to you so that it doesn't go to the kids. And so now you're going against the father's wishes. So he thought that it's an invalid gift to Yonatan in the first place. So we're going to see, based on the following story, what Shammai was thinking, and then why he realized he was wrong. Ditnan is a Mishnah in Masechet Nedarin. Ma'aseh bebet choron be'echad shaya aviv mudad hemenu hana'a v'ya masi beno v'amar lechavero harei chaser u'seuda netunin lecha b'matana ve'enan lefanecha ela kedei she'yavo abba v'yochal imanu b'seuda. There was a person in Bet Choron who did not have a good relationship with his father, and his father said, I will not get any benefit from you. The father's like, I'm not coming to your house, I'm not eating over, I'm not coming to any parties that you have, I will not benefit from you, because the father was so angry for whatever reason. And turns out that son was making a wedding for his own son. This is the grandson of the grandfather who made the vow. Now, by that point, the son wants his father to attend. Right? The one making the party, the middle guy, wants the father to be able to attend the wedding. The problem is the father made this vow, and now how can you undo? You can't undo the vow. I guess you could do hatara, maybe, whatever. They didn't undo the vow, and the son wants the father to be able to come over and participate in the wedding. So he's going to use a workaround. He goes to his friend, the person who's making the wedding, goes to his friend and says, listen, this courtyard, my courtyard in which I'm making the wedding, and the entire celebration, the entire meal, everything, I am giving it to you as a gift. This is your food, this is your courtyard, and you can do with it whatever you want. But I am giving it to you only so that my father will be able to come and eat with us during the meal. And this will be a way to circumvent the vow, since he can't come over to my house and eat my food, because that goes against the vow. But he's allowed to come to your house and eat your food. So now this is your courtyard, this is your food, and I'm giving it to this to you only so that you will invite my father, and that way he will come and we'll make the wedding. So he's like giving a wink wink, and he's going to he's still making the wedding, but technically it's not mine, I'm giving it to you. So what did that friend do? He did not want to play along. Amar lo im shelihen harehen muktashin lashamayim. The friend says, okay, it's mine. If it's really mine, I am consecrating all the food to the Bet HaMikdash, and that's it. Now nobody can eat anything at the wedding. Amar lo natati lecha ela et sheli shetakdishem lashamayim. The one who made the wedding said, I didn't give everything to you so that you should make it hekdesh. I only gave it to you so that it'll be a workaround, so that we would make the wedding and you would invite my father. Amar lo natata li et shelecha ela sheteh ata ve'abicha ochlin v'shotin umerasin ze lazeh ve'avon talui berosho. And the friend who consecrated everything says, no, I know why you gave it to me. You gave everything to me only so that you and your father can eat and drink together, appease each other. Now you're making up, but who's going to be in violation of the sin? Me. It's going to be on my head that I enabled this transgression. And so I know this is only a loophole. You're not really giving it to me as a gift. I don't want to be involved in going around and circumventing this vow and it being a sin. So therefore I said, I don't want to be involved. if it's not mine, it's not mine. If it is mine, I'm going to make it consecrated. And sure enough, it is consecrated. Amru chachamim, kol matana she'ena she'im she'ikdisha mukdeshet ena matana. And chachamim in that Mishnah says, any gift that is such that if the gift receiver, if he wanted to make it consecrated, it would not be consecrated, then that's not really a gift. In other words, in order to be a gift, it has to be fully a gift that the recipient can do whatever they want with it. No strings attached. If you say, I'm going to give you a gift on condition that you don't do whatever you want with it, you only have the party and invite my father and so on, then that's not really a gift. And therefore, we see it's a gift is all or nothing. So now we can answer the original question. At first, Shammai thought that the person who died gave Yonatan ben Uziel a gift, saying, listen, I am giving you this gift so that I can give it to my sons. I made a vow, if it's really just like the story here, which we're learning from. So the father, let's say he made a vow and says, I'm not giving my kids anything. And so he wrote them out of the will. But then he's about to die. He's like, you know what? I feel bad. I want my kids to have something. So he tells Yonatan ben Uziel, listen, Yonatan ben Uziel, I'm going to give it to you as a gift, and you'll give all the money to my kids, right? And so then he dies. Now Yonatan ben Uziel, what is he supposed to do? So he gives and part of it, a third of it, to the kids. Shammai at first thought that this is not valid because you're just doing a workaround of the vow, but really it's in violation of the vow. The father only gave it to you so that you would give it to the kids, and you can't do anything else with it. If he gave it to you on condition that you give it to the kids, then it's invalid because it's going against the vow. So at first he came and wanted to stop him and said to tell him, you cannot give it to the kids. The father made a vow, and you can't participate in violating the vow. But then Yonatan ben Uziel says, I didn't give everything to the kids. I sold some of it for myself. Some of it I made hekdesh, and some of it I gave to the kids. It was at my discretion. And then Shammai realized, was that your discretion? As we just said in this Mishnah. In any case where you, if someone made it hekdesh, it is in fact hekdesh, then that's a full gift. And here he made it hekdesh, and it is fully hekdesh. So Yonatan ben Uziel didn't have to give it to the kids. He could have kept it all himself. He could have made it all hekdesh. And therefore, it is fully a gift. And now that it's his, so now we can say, if I decide, Yonatan ben Uziel, maybe he saw that some of the kids were doing better, and he decided, for whatever reason, to give a third of it to the children, then that certainly is valid, and we don't say this is just a loophole to get around the vow, because it's a full gift. Once it's really a gift, then it's okay. It's kind of like selling chametz on Pesach. What would you do if the non-Jew came over and said, I want all my chametz? Well, if you'd really give it to him, okay, then that means you really sold it. But if you would not actually give it to him, then that means you never really relinquished ownership over it, and then that would be a problem. Okay, Teno Rabbanan. Shemonim Talmidim hayu lo lehilel hazaken. And now we have Agadah showing the greatness of Yonatan ben Uziel, since we just mentioned him. So this Baraita says that Hillel HaZaken, the colleague of Shammai HaZaken, had 80 students. 30 of them were on such a high level that Shekhinah could rest on them at the same level as it did to Moshe Rabbeinu. The 30 lowest kids, the dumb class, were so great that they could stop the sun, just like Yoshua bin Nun stopped the sun. So they were also very high, and that was the lowest of the 80. Esrim ben Onim and 20 were between those two, the middle class. Gadol shebekulan Yonatan ben Uziel, katan shebekulan Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai. The greatest of all the sages was Yonatan ben Uziel. So imagine, right, of the worst class could make the sun stop. The best class was at the level of Moshe Rabbeinu. Yonatan ben Uziel was the top of the top. And the lowest of the students was Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, who we all know was himself the greatest sage of his generation, one of. How great was Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, the least of Hillel's students? קלים וחמורים, וגזרות שוות ותקופות וגימטריות ומשלות קובסין ומשלות שועלים, שיחת שדים ושיחת דקרים, שיחת מלאכי השרת ודבר גדול ודבר קטן. They said about Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai that he did not neglect. He was an expert in Mikra, Torah she'bechtav. Mishnah, Torah she'be'al peh. Talmud is not talking about Gemara because it was not written yet, but rather it was taking the traditions of the Mishnah and being able to analyze them, derive one thing from the other. Halachot is other legal formulations like in Baraitot, Agadot, everything that's not halacha, stories, and so on. Diktuke sofra, understanding the letters and the spellings and meanings of the minor parts, the minor aspects of the details of the written law. Diktuke sofrim is rabbinic laws that the sages of old have made. Kal vachomez, gezerot shavot, ways that we derive laws from Pesukim. Tikufot, understanding the calendar, which is very difficult mathematically to figure everything out, gematria, and parables regarding launderers and of foxes. We have a couple of parables regarding launderers in the story of Av and Avachnai. You can look there for an example, and like fables that involve foxes and animals. A conversation with demons and with palm trees, when you hear wind and wisps and the leaves rustling, you can derive meaning from that, and the conversations of the angels, and great things and small things. What's that? Davar gadol maaseh merkava. Davar katan havayot abaye v'rabba. The great things are maaseh merkava, understanding Yechezkel chapter 1 when he sees God and his throne, and what the symbolic and deep meaning, mystical meaning of that is. And the small things are the discussions of Abaye and Rava. Of course, Abaye and Rava did not yet live. They would not live for a while. They lived way after the Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai. But the point is that all the discussions, the back and forth questions and answers that are involved in the deep study of the halacha, that's called something small, which is quite amazing that the Gemara itself, which is built on the Havayot of Abaye and Rava, discussion of Abaye and Rava, would call that a small thing. What do you mean a small thing? That's what we do all day in Daf Yomi. It means it's a small thing in comparison with Maaseh Merkava, which is the deep philosophy. So that just shows how great that is. It's kind of like we're saying Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai was the smallest of all these students, but look how great he was. So it's saying this to show you, to imagine how great the greatest of the students were. And this fulfills the pasuk that says, I may cause those that love me to inherit substance, that I may fill their treasures. In other words, he was full of all the treasures of Torah and wisdom and all kinds of knowledge. And so now, if the smallest of the students was this great, you can only imagine Yonatan ben Uziel, the greatest of the students, was even greater than that. אמרו עליו על יונתן בן עוזיאל בשעה שיושב ועוסק בתורה, כל עוף שפורח עליו נשרף. They said about Yonatan ben Uziel that when he would sit and engage in Torah study, if a bird flew over him, it would immediately incinerate. Maybe it's a hint to Ma'amad Har Sinai, where fire, clouds and fire come down, and so he himself is like a little Ma'amad Har Sinai, and his Torah learning is so great, is so direct, that it causes this kind of fire that makes a barbecue of any birds that fly above him. Next Mishnah. Ha'omer ze beni ne'eman, ze achi eno ne'eman, v'yitol imo bechelko. If someone testifies, this is my son, then that person is believed. what will this impact? The Gemara will say, we'll talk about that, but certainly it means that if when that person dies, then we assume that the son is in fact the son, and therefore that person who we testified about will inherit the father. Okay, that's a simple case. Now, the next case is more interesting. Someone says, this is my brother, he is not believed. So let's talk about the case. Let's imagine that there's a father, and he has two sons that we all know about, Reuven and Shimon. And then one day, Reuven someone comes from overseas, call him Levi. And Reuven says, Levi, oh, my brother. And he testifies, this Levi here, this is my brother. But Shimon says, no, he's not my brother. I never saw this guy before. Now, when the father dies, so Shimon wants to get half, and he deserves half, because we don't believe Reuven that this is in fact the brother. So Shimon gets half. Now Reuven gets the other half. The problem is that Reuven testified that Levi is one of the brothers. And so V'tol imo bechelko means that Reuven has to share his half with Shimon, with Levi rather. So when the father dies, half goes to Shimon. He's the one that denies, I don't know who this guy is. He only missed to one brother, he gets half. Reuven will have to take his half and split it himself and keep a quarter for himself, and a quarter of the entire estate he has to give to Levi. In other words, we believe him with regard to himself, but he cannot impose that on to Shimon. We're talking about where there's no other testimony. It's not two witnesses. There's no other documentation or anything. Just by going by Reuven, we don't go by that. Now, met yachzirun nechasim limkoman. If Levi dies, and let's say he has no children and no other heirs, so that his brothers will inherit, so then that quarter that he got initially goes back to Reuven. It won't go back to Shimon because Shimon didn't participate. Shimon didn't give anything to Levi, so it doesn't make sense for Levi to have to give something back to Shimon. But Reuven, who gave him half of his own, will get that back when he dies. And finally, naflu lo nechasim makom acher yirshu echav imo. Let's say Levi, after all this happened, right? The father died, and Reuven gave a quarter of the estate to Levi, and all of a sudden Levi wins the lottery, $1 million, or someone else dies and he gets it. And now that Levi dies, and that Levi has no children and no father, and so who's going to inherit? His brothers. Who gets it? The answer is Reuven and Shimon. Why? Because, well, what's Reuven going to say? Reuven might want to say, hey, Shimon, you didn't participate and give him money when our dad died, so you shouldn't get any of the $1 million either. But Shimon claims back, Reuven, you yourself admit that he is our brother, right? So I agree. Now I want my money. And so when Levi dies, $500,000 goes to Reuven, and $500,000 goes to Shimon. So you have a really interesting case where there's somewhat of a double standard. Reuven is not believed to the extent that he can make Shimon pay, but if Levi all of a sudden gets a lot of money and dies without any other heirs, then Shimon will get half of the estate of that long-lost brother. Gemara. The beginning of the Mishnah says, if someone says, this is my son, we believe him, even without another witness, without any further proof, we simply believe him. So what does this apply to? Shmuel says it applies to two laws. Number one, as an inheritance. When that guy dies, who testified, then all his estate will go to that person, because that's his son. And also another thing, to exempt his wife from doing yibum. You see, if let's say this guy, if he dies without children and he has a brother, let's say we know he has a brother, and then he dies without children, his wife won't be able to marry anyone she wants. She'll have to do yibum or chalitza. But if this guy, the husband, testifies while he's alive and says, this is my son, then since he has a son, the wife doesn't have to do yibum, cannot do yibum, but she will have to marry someone else. So that makes a big difference. Now, from the fact that the son will inherit, that's obvious. Why is it obvious that we should believe him? Because it's in his power to make it so. While this father is alive, he could gift everything that he has to this person. So if he just wants him to get the money, he could gift it. And therefore, we should believe him when he says, this is my son, and give it to him as an inheritance. Like if he was lying, why bother lying when you could just give it to him now? So therefore, since he has no incentive to lie, we may as well believe him. So that's a simple case. But but we need this statement, we need the Mishnah to teach us. In other words, we don't even need the Mishnah to teach us that the son inherits. But we do need the Mishnah to teach us that we believe this father to say, this is my son, such that his wife will be exempt from Yibum, because there's no obvious way that he could just exempt his wife. We're going to see in a minute that he could divorce her, but without that, he can't kind of remain status quo, may remain married to her, and get her out of Yibum in another way. So this is what we need the Mishnah to teach us this law. But then we ask, we have another Mishnah in Masechet Kiddushin that teaches us this very law about Yibum. If someone is on his deathbed and he says, I have sons. We didn't know that he had sons before, but all of a sudden he says, I have sons. We believe him, and when he dies, his wife does not have to do Yibum. You see, this is exactly the law that we were getting at. So we already know it from this Mishnah. That Mishnah in Masechet Kiddushin adds something else. If he says, I have brothers, he's not believed. Let's say beforehand we assumed that he has no brothers, and therefore, even if he has no sons, the wife would not have to do Yibum. Even if there's no sons, if there's no brothers either, then there's nobody to do Yibum with, so there's no Yibum. If all of a sudden he says, I have brothers, we don't believe him, and they're not there, these brothers. He's like, I have brothers somewhere else. We don't believe him, and she does not have to do Yibum. In other words, we give her the benefit of the doubt either way. So anyway, we have this Mishnah that already teaches us the law that if someone says, I have a son, he is believed, and the wife does not have to do Yibum. Why do I need this Mishnah here in Masechet Batra? And the answer is Hatam de la muhzak lan be'ach. Hacha afal gav de muhzak le be'ach. There it was talking about a case where there was no prior chazakah, no prior assumption that this husband had a brother. And that's why we believe him there in Mishnah Kiddushin. When he says, I have sons, we believe him because actually we didn't even know he had brothers anyway. So we weren't going to make him do Yibum, and no matter what, because we thought he didn't have brothers. So now he says, oh, by the way, I have sons. Okay, you weren't going to do Yibum anyway. So yeah, there's no loss in us believing you that you have sons. That's all we would know if we only had Masechet Kiddushin. And so that's why I need this Mishnah to teach us that this law is true, even if there is a chazakah that he has brothers. So you have a guy, he's married, and he has brothers. So right now, if he dies, we're going to say, well, you have to go do Yibum. And he's on his deathbed, he says, oh, this is my son. We believe him. That's the chidush of this Mishnah, that we do believe him, and now she changes her status, and she no longer has to do Yibum. That's the chidush of our Mishnah. Now, now we understand why we need the Mishnah, but we still need a reason why this should be the law. Amar Rav Yosef, Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shemuel, Mipnei ma amru ze beni ne'eman, hoilu ba'al she'emar gerashti et ishti ne'eman. Shemuel explains, why did they teach in the Mishnah that if someone says, this is my son, he's believed, and his wife does not have to do Yibum when he dies? Because if a husband says, I divorced my wife, he would be believed. So since he could say, he's there and he said, I divorced my wife, then she wouldn't have to do Yibum. So if instead he says, this is my son, so also he won't have to do Yibum. He could have done something else. He could have said something else. It would have believed. So there's no reason to not believe him if he says, this is my son. Amar Rav Yosef, Maret Abraham, Taleh Tanya, Bedela Tanya. Rav Yosef wonders about the statement of Shemuel, right? The master of Abraham, God. How could Shemuel say this? He is depending a matter that has a Tanaitic source based on something that has no Tanaitic source. Now we have a Tanaitic source that says, this is my son, we believe him. That's our Mishnah. And he's saying, how do we know this is true? Because we know that if someone says, I divorced my wife, we believe him. There is no Mishnah like that. This is just a statement of an Amorah. Shemuel, you just said that. You made up this law, and you're explaining explaining the Mishnah based on a law that is not in the Mishnah. So this is not a good derivation. Rather, let's reformulate what Shemuel said so it makes more sense. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shemuel, Mipenema Amru Ze Beni Ne'eman, Ho'il Ubiyado Legarsha. Shemuel explains like this. How come in the Mishnah it says, if someone says, this is my son, he's believed and his wife does not have to do Yibum? Because he could actually divorce her now, not because he could say, I divorced her. I don't know if we would believe him if he said, I divorced her. We haven't established that yet. But he could go right now, write up a divorce, give it to her, and then she won't have to do Yibum. So since it's in his hands to change her status, to make her exempt from Yibum, he's believed when he says, this is my son, which also exempts her from Yibum. Amar Rav Yosef, Hashtad Amat Amrinan Ho'il, Baal Shamar Gerashti et Ishti, Ne'eman, Ho'il Ubiyado Legarsha. Now Rav Yosef adds to this statement, now since you told me a Ho'il type of logic, right? Since, this is a since logic, since he could have given a divorce and made her exempt from Yibum, therefore we will believe him when he says, my son, and exempt her from Yibum. Once you say you accept this since type of reasoning, then I could take it a step further. And I can prove that if a husband says, testifies with another witness. He testified alone, and he says, I divorced my wife. He is believed because he could actually do it, since he could go and write a divorce right now and give it to her. So he's believed if he says, I did it already. So it's the same type of reasoning, so we're just extending it one step further. Ki ata Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef amar Rabbi Yochanan Baal Shamar. And now, sometime after, Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef came from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel and reported in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that if a husband says, I divorced my wife, he is not believed. So now we see that there's something wrong with this logic. Menapeyach Rav Sheshat bideh azah lehoil de Rav Yosef. And Rav Sheshat waved his hand in despair. He says, oh well, the ho'il logic of Rav Yosef is gone. Right? It makes sense what Rav Yosef said, that since a person can divorce his wife, he should be believed to say, I divorced my wife. But obviously there's something wrong with this logic, because we reported in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that this is simply not true. Hold on, not so fast. We have another report from Rabbi Chia bar Avin, also in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, who says that if a husband says, I divorced my wife, he is believed. So now we have a contradiction between two statements of Rabbi Yochanan. And we answer, La kashya kan lemafreya kan lehaba. When we said that we don't believe him, the first statement that we reported in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that's talking about retroactive, something that happened in the past. For example, let's say you have this married couple, and there's some testimony that she committed adultery some month ago. And then at this point, the husband comes and says, oh, I testify, I divorced my wife 2 months ago. So are we going to believe him and get her off the hook with that testimony? The answer is no, because now he's testifying now that he did something 2 months ago to get her off the hook of something that we suspect she did. We know she did something, right? There's witnesses that she was with this other man 1 month ago. That's for sure. And if she was married at the time, then she would be liable. But if she was not married, she would not be liable. The husband wants to save his wife, even though she committed adultery. So he says, oh, I divorced her 2 months ago, and therefore she was single at that time, so don't give her the death penalty. So in that case, we're not going to believe him about something that happened before to save her from something that she did a month ago. However, when Rabbi Yochanan said, we do believe her, that's talking about from now on, that if he says today, I divorced my wife, and then in a month from now, she's with another guy, then we will use his testimony to say she's okay, because we assume that she was divorced. Why? What's the difference between retroactive and then the future? It is based on this very logic of ho'il. We only believe him because he could give a get right now. So that only works from now on. See, he could say right now, he says, I divorced her. We believe him because he could do it right now. So therefore, we believe him from now on, because he could do it now. So therefore, believe him that he did it. But if right now she is accused a month ago of being with another man, right now he cannot give her a get 2 months ago. He can't go back in time and give her a get 2 months ago. So we're not going to believe him now to say, I divorced her 2 months ago. We can only believe him now for whatever happens from now on. Good. Now we have an interesting time paradox question. Let's say today he comes and testifies, I divorced my wife 2 months ago. Will we believe him going forward that they are divorced? So right now he said, I divorced my wife 2 months ago. And then in a month from now, she is with another man. And there's testimony and it says, oh, look, you were with that man. And the husband said, and then we recall, the husband said that he divorced her. Remember, he said that today on this day, and he said that about 2 months ago. Will we believe him or not? See, this is a real paradox, because we just said that if a husband says, I divorced you 2 months ago, we do not believe him regarding 2 months ago. But if he says today, since he could give a divorce today, we believe him now on. Now, this is a combination case. He says now, I divorced my wife 2 months ago. Fine, we can't believe him for something that she did a month ago, but can we believe him from now on, since he could give a get now? So the answer is mi palginan dibura or la palginan dibura. Rav Mari Rav Zevit chadamar palginan v'chadamar la palginan. So the answer depends on whether you say you can divide a statement or you cannot divide a statement. And this is a machlok between Rav Mari and Rav Zevit. One says you can, one says you cannot. The opinion that says you can divide a statement will say as follows. Listen, when the husband says, I divorced my wife 2 months ago, we divide the impact of his statement and we say, listen, regarding anything that happened in the past, we do not believe you, because right now you could not go back in time and give her a get. However, regarding anything that happens from now and to the future, we do believe you. So the very same statement, the very same testimony, we believe it for the future, but not for the past. So we divide the statement, not literally, we don't divide it past a comma. We will apply it to the future, but not to the past. That's one opinion. Another opinion says, no, you have to either believe the whole thing or not, or believe none of it. It's all or nothing, right? Do you believe this testimony or not? Is it true or false? And since you cannot accept that as true because you're not going to accept it for the past, because he can't go back and give his get right now 2 months ago, therefore you have to throw out the whole thing, and we do not believe him even for the future. Okay, Mai Shena Med Ravada Amarava Ish Peloni Baal Ishti Hu Vachir Mistarfin Lehorgo Velo Lehorga. And now we ask, how come in this case that we just talked about above, we said it's a machloket, but in the following case, Rava talks about a case where we do definitely split the statement, split the testimony. The case of Rava is someone comes along and says, this person had relations with my wife. He and another witness. There's two witnesses. One of them is the husband of the woman who he's testifying about, and the other is not a related person, a totally kosher witness. So what happens? The husband and the other witness can join together to give him, the adulterer, the death penalty, but not her. Why not her? Because there's only one valid witness regarding her. A husband cannot testify about his wife, and therefore we split their testimony in half, and we say, let's see, regarding this man, did he commit adultery? We have two witnesses. You're both not related to this man. Okay, we believe the two witnesses, and we go and kill that adulterer. Now when it comes to the woman, what about her? Only one valid witness that she committed adultery. The husband, we cannot accept his testimony. So she lives, which is quite a paradox, because how can you kill him for sleeping with her when you don't kill her? No, so we believe that he is guilty, but in order for him to be guilty, he had to sleep with someone, with her. So obviously she did also. But that's the paradox of this law. That's the chidush. You kill him, but not her. So how come over here Rava took it as obvious that we do divide testimony, but up over here it's a machloket whether we do or not? And the answer is the cases are in fact different. When we're talking about two different people, then we divide a statement. We could say this testimony does apply to that guy. guy, that adulterer, because it's totally valid testimony with two witnesses. But it does not apply to another person, the wife, because she gets off on a technicality. I mean, we kind of know that she did it. We're so sure because we're killing the man that she was with. But she gets off on a technicality that there's a problem with the testimony. One of the witnesses is related to her. So when it comes to two people, then everybody agrees you can separate the testimony. But regarding one and the same person, you cannot divide it. And that's what we're talking about here. The husband says, I divorced my wife. So now you're going to say that we believe that she is single from now on, but we think that she is married from before today, even though there's no claim that he gave a get today. I mean, he could give a get today, but that's not what he said. He didn't say I gave her a get today. He said I gave her a get 2 months ago. So you're going to believe it for the future, but not for the past 2 months. And it's about the same person. It's about the status of his wife. So regarding one very person, that is what the machloket is about, whether you can divide testimony for one body. But if it's two bodies, then everybody would agree that you can divide the testimony and apply it to one person and not the other. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen.